So a couple of weeks ago now, Doctor Who announced that Drag Race winner Jinx Monsoon was joining the cast of Series 14. And we've now got a few first look images which gives a bit of an idea about what character Jinx will be playing, and also kind of raise some questions about what this episode might be about. So at present, we still don't know what Jinx character will be called, what their name is. I mean, this has happened in the past with previous announcements, like with Neil Patrick Harris for the 60th. We got that photo, but we still don't know to this day, what character it is, whether it's the toy maker, whether it's someone else. So obviously, what we've got here is some sort of villain, first of all, that has been confirmed, and a villain with a pretty elaborate costume, which, kind of makes sense, for someone who comes from like a drag race, drag queen sort of background. It makes sense to have this kind of larger-than-life, kind of campy-looking character, which, is something which we've not really seen in Doctor Who before, which is quite exciting, I think. Obviously in the past, we have had, camp villains, intentionally or unintentionally camp villains and monsters, whatever, and characters. It kind of harks back to a lot of those old kind of classic Who villains, I think, in particular, and other kind of references more broadly, stuff like Cruella de Vil, like campy sort of villains, kind of larger-than-life personalities, very kind of glamorous, all that kind of stuff. But of course, the big takeaway is this piano motif. So we've got piano keys along the lapels, along the bits kind of draping down, the sleeves, I suppose, or whatever those bits are, and all across the costume, this kind of colour scheme and this motif of black and white and piano keys, white keys, black keys, whatever. So that would kind of suggest that this character, or very kind of strongly imply that this character, is going to be connected to music in some way, which again is not something we've seen in Doctor Who before. A kind of villain that's kind of influenced by music, and perhaps uses music as some kind of way of enacting their evil plans. Maybe like a kind of Phantom of the Opera type figure. Maybe someone's going to be sat down at a piano or an organ or something, kind of thumping down those evil chords, like evil organ chords and stuff like that. Da da da, and all that kind of stuff. And based on that, if we're going to kind of follow the precedent set of other kind of big Doctor Who villains, because this character's been kind of described, I think, as the Doctor's most powerful enemy, or something in the press release, which, yes, they've said loads of times in the past about various people. I think they said a very similar thing about Neil Patrick Harris's character as well, when he was announced. And obviously, the Daleks, the Master, the Cybermen, whatever, they've all been the Doctor's greatest villain, at one point or another. But if this villain's going to have a similarly sort of grand name, like the Master or the Rani, the Toymaker, whatever, could we be looking at here the pianist or the instrumentalist or the maestro? I saw someone suggest that. I quite like that idea of having like a big bad called the Maestro. That's quite a nice idea, I think, a nice little name. I mean, just to touch on it briefly as well, there have been rumours that this character is a returning character, namely the Master or the Rani or someone like that. I've seen a lot of people kind of suggesting that Jinx Monsoon, would make a good Rani. People were saying that a lot at the time of the initial press release, but I think a little bit less so since these photos have been revealed. Because this piano motif, this music motif, does seem to be a pretty big part of this character's personality, and that doesn't really gel with what we've seen, so far of the Master, of the Rani as well, particularly because she's always been quite a scientific character. That's always been her thing in her handful of appearances in the classic era. Yes, okay, Jinx might have made a great Rani, but personally, I'm not really seeing that here. I'm seeing a brand new character, essentially, the Maestro or whatever, some kind of new music-inspired big bad. And all this speculation has brought us back round to the age-old question about whether Doctor Who is about to do a musical episode, which is something that, a lot of people are kind of pretty dead set against. A lot of people are quite open to the idea as well, I think. It's an idea that's been floated in the past at various points. I can't quite pinpoint when exactly, but it is one of those things that people kind of suggested over time, again and again and again, saying, why not have a musical episode? Why not do this? Why not do that? And yeah, I think personally speaking, if they were to go down that route with this character, that's not something that I would say no to seeing. I think it'd be quite entertaining, to be honest, quite different for the show, obviously. And people have strong opinions either way on whether that could work or not. I do think, logistically speaking, it's perhaps unrealistic to expect like a full-on musical episode of the show, because for one thing, it would be a massive logistical challenge in terms of kind of getting it all right and getting it all filmed, and the singing as well kind of add on like an extra layer to it. If every single line of dialogue was sung instead of spoken. And also on a similar sort of note there, like Ncuti Gatwa, Millie Gibson, maybe they can sing. I don't know, but yeah, like certainly that's not what they were cast for. In the first place, they were cast because they make a good Doctor and a good companion, basically. Not on the strength of their voice, and so to kind of shoehorn that in would probably pose a few problems. I think that's putting it lightly, really, because like the whole of the cast, the whole of the crew would have to be comfortable doing that, and it is quite a different thing to what a standard Doctor Who episode is. And like be a big demand on the composer as well. As I say, like every single line of dialogue would have to be sung rather than spoken, and it would be a very kind of big challenge, and not something which I think the production team would kind of shy away from or say no to. I think on the contrary, someone like Russell T Davies would very much be up for that challenge. But I do just wonder, how realistic that would actually be. I personally think, what's more realistic, perhaps, if there is some singing involved here, be it just from Jinx's character, be it from other characters too. And let's be honest, I think that's a pretty sound prediction to make, going into this episode, whatever this is, because Jinx Monsoon has been on Broadway and done a lot of singing and stuff. I think just the other day there was like a video of her singing some kind of song, doing some performance on Broadway or whatever, and it was like, wow, yeah, this is great, let's have this in the show. If you're going to have someone like this in Doctor Who, you just wouldn't pass up on that opportunity, I don't think. I mean, then again, like with someone like Kylie Minogue, obviously she didn't sing as part of her character, as part of Astrid in Voyage of the Damned, so you never know. But I do think there's a very strong possibility that Jinx's character, at the very least, will be singing, and possibly some other characters as well. Maybe we might have an episode which has various musical numbers within it, so it's not like a kind of full-on musical. You can have a bit of dialogue in there, to break things up as well, to intersperse between these musical numbers. Maybe have a few numbers from Jinx, and a bit from the Doctor as well, if Ncuti's up for it, and other characters. And maybe that could kind of be woven into the plot in a really interesting way. In a similar way to how people have been speculating about how, like, the toy maker, if it is the toy maker, in the 60th, could kind of be playing a game with the Doctor and with Donna, kind of bringing them back together, giving the Doctor their old face again, and like playing with them like pawns. Maybe Jinx's villain character is in a similar sort of way, playing around with the Doctor and with Ruby in terms of music, and like, forcing them to sing. Maybe she like casts a spell over them that makes them sing every word they speak rather than say it, or something wacky like that. It's probably quite far off the mark from what we're actually going to see in this episode when it does eventually, come out. But yeah, it's fun to speculate about how that might work. And I do think, like I say, that at the very least, Jinx herself will be performing at least one musical number in this episode, whatever it is. I mean, it just kind of has to happen, I think, particularly when you've got this character as well, or like maybe doing like a piano piece or some kind of musical performance. The character just demands it, really. Those are my thoughts on these photos of Jinx Monsoon and her character and the prospect of a musical Doctor Who episode. What do you think Jinx's character will be getting up to, or evil schemes she will be putting the Doctor through in Series 14? And is a musical episode of Doctor Who, or a Doctor Who episode which contains musical numbers, is that something which you would like to see or not? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this in the future. But otherwise, until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.